Hello and welcome. It's 4 p.m. and it's Thursday, which means it's time for the Etch Play weekly live show. I am your host for today. My name is Adam Burt, and thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you taking the time. Here's what's coming up on today's show. First up today, we're having a discussion with Amandine Flachs, who has joined me to talk all about game AI, and that's going to be lots of fun. We'll just get straight into that in just a minute. After that, we're going to be looking at Xbox Cloud Gaming, our first impressions, which we've got on a little pre-recorded video for you. And then stick around because later on we're talking about all the latest games industry news, including some really interesting news stories today. If you're watching, if you're locked in, say hi in the chat and we will call you out, shout you out, whatever you call it, and hopefully have a good time. Amandine, it's nice to see you. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate your time, especially. And you're here to talk about AI in games. So for those of you who don't know, Amandine is the CEO and co-founder of Wild Meta, who are a company who specialise in advancing game AI, which is artificial intelligence, that kind of powers games and the way that enemies behave, or anything behaves, I guess, in games, using machine learning, which is kind of a hot topic, I guess, at the minute in the world of computing and technology. So to get us started, I mean, for those of you who maybe at home aren't as familiar with AI in games, I was wondering, could you give us an introduction, Amandine, like what's the history of AI in games? What's this all about?
Okay, so good. An introduction of game AI. So that's interesting because you mentioned game AI and explaining that when we talk about game AI, it's what's behind characters' behavior, right? But then you mentioned artificial intelligence, and that's where it can be confusing because what my company is doing is using machine learning, and usually we talk about AI. So to remove any confusion, the way we're doing game AI hasn't changed in years in video games. So you're going to use different techniques, things like, for example, nav mesh or pathfinding, object avoidance, these kind of things specifically. And so the bots are going to be hard-coded. And so this is how it has been done for years. And I think I'm not necessarily the best person to give you a timeline for this type of traditional game AI, because what we're doing is we are changing completely the way you're doing AI. And so we're using machine learning. So instead of following a script of actions or having really complex codes together, we are actually using machine learning to have NPCs that actually learn to play a specific game. And so they play with the players live. So that means that when they decide to emit an action to maybe attack or be more on the defensive or whatever, if for example, if you're using for the opponent AI, then it's going to adapt and to play the game depending on what is around and the actions of the players. And so just to give a bit of an explanation of machine learning in games, maybe, to give you a bit of timeline on that, machine learning has been using video games for quite some time to show their work, because games are a very good environment for machine learning. It's a controlled environment, and so it's great when you're doing machine learning research to test your assumptions and just to train also. And so we've seen lots of application for researchers, but then we've seen kind of a gap between this academic research and the settings and the needs they have, and then the real life application within the game. And so we see more and more companies, especially AAA big studios, that are dedicating some teams to see the different application of machine learning in games. And the thing is, there isn't just one way of using machine learning. My company is focusing on the game AIs. But then you can also use machine learning, for example, for animations, to improve the animation, or for different aspects, let's say for balancing the difficulty of the game, or there are many ways, but we're focusing on the game AI.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I want to focus on the word you used there, because you used the word adapt. And I guess that's the key word, isn't it? Because historically, AI would have just been whatever a programmer thinks of. If a programmer thinks to write a response to something that the player does, then the enemy or the environment or the object could do it. But the exciting thing about machine learning is that you kind of just give it the same tool set that a player would have and say, experiment with it and figure out what works by iterating on it and trying it multiple times to figure out what the best way to, I guess, be more human is, like to act more like a person.
Yes, and there are also different way of different techniques with machine learning. And so, for example, there is something that you can do to help the AI be a bit more human-like, and it's using existing gameplay played by humans. You show that to the AI while it's training, and so it can learn some mechanisms and tactics. It can be especially interesting if, for example, you want to show some cooperative behavior, and so the AI can understand that, okay, I can do that. So then by playing the game again and again and again, it learns different things, but it can also learn from what it has seen before.
Okay, that's really cool. So you talked about how the machine learning has been, like we said at the top of the show, it's a kind of a hot topic in the world of technology generally, and there's been a lot of kind of theoretical implementations or discussions or experiments, I guess. How close do you think we are to seeing machine learning, appearing in AAA titles? Are we like on the brink of this happening really soon, do you think?
I think it's already happening. It's just we don't necessarily know about it. So there have been a few companies talking about it, but sometimes you really have to be looking for this information to really know about this specific game using machine learning. So, for example, the other day I was giving a presentation, and the moderator in the end asked me for some example of games, and I was like, okay, so I know this game is using this. For example, Sony and I think it was Insomniac, when building the Spider-Man, the latest Spider-Man, they did some really quiet press releases about using machine learning for the animation to make it more like movie-like. Okay. And so I was mentioning this, and the moderator was also saying, oh yeah, I also know that in this game and that game. And so without really looking specifically on the internet, you don't necessarily come across it, but yes, it's already in use. Mm-hmm. But now I think what's going to come soon is that it's not going to be just reserved for the big companies who have the resources to allocate an entire team for that and to have their own system in place. But I want to see more studios using this technology. And the thing is, I understand it's hard to integrate right now because, well, in terms of the technological aspect, it's hard to find talents who understand games and machine learning. That's already two kind of rare profiles. So the two combined, it's very hard to find. And also you need to understand your need for compute power. You need to understand the tech stack. You need to also figure out how this is going to fit into your existing team. And also in terms of monetary aspect, that's quite important for most studios. Most studios have budget for one project or one game. The thing is, machine learning is expensive when you have to build everything from scratch, and if you have to have a budget for the R&D to start from scratch, it may not be. It may be hard to justify just for one game. And that's why we decided, my co-founder and I, we really looked at this, and that's why we tried to build a solution that works for as many games as possible and can be really adaptable. And so we can do the R&D so studios don't need to do it, because I don't see studios having machine learning experts in-house soon. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that you can't use services and companies that are using machine learning within their own system, that already have developed something specifically for one use case, and you can use that. And I think that will be the best way to for machine learning to be integrated today in video games. But then it's also a chicken and egg problem. You have the PR part, but also you don't want to be the first one to integrate a new technology, and so you want to see more examples of this being used specifically. And so you're like, well, you need to have a first one. Like, you need to have a big name or someone that has some visibility to show the way and to democratize this. Also, that will help a lot.
Yeah, I guess it maybe seems a bit risky, especially if it is, as you say, it can be expensive. And obviously I think it's quite clear to see what the benefits for players could be. Like, I think everybody who plays games would would love to see AI move forward and to play against enemies or interacting environments that feel more real, that feel more kind of comprehensively thought out. But it sounds like from what you guys are doing, there's actually as much benefit for companies themselves, like in terms of like smoothing out processes, making processes easier. And you mentioned animation, and I know you guys do, or you've talked about doing stuff with QA as well, and how you might be able to kind of streamline the QA process using machine learning. Is that something you could talk about?
Yeah, sure. It's not necessarily our focus, but when we were thinking about the different use cases, you think first about the usual type of game. So you think, okay, what the benefits for a multiplayer game? So you're like, well, you can have opponents that are always available. You can also have if you have lots of players in a game and you have some players that for some reason are dropping and get disconnected, you replace them with bots. If you have a competitive game, you need to have like stronger bots that can really be good opponent for the players to improve. We also talk already about the navigation, how you go from point A to point B naturally and just navigating your map. And so also if you're using procedural generation, which happen more and more now in games, how do you create an AI that is robust to that? Well, with machine learning, it's much easier. But then also you mentioned Q&A and QA. And for QA, we've been thinking, okay, even if it's not our core focus, once you have an AI that knows how to play a game, then we can imagine using it to explore its environment and report something that it notices, some bugs. Or you can also imagine having AIs that test your servers, for example, instead of paying for having people from all over the world connecting and having to organize all that. You can also start by having just bot that test your servers. That's kind of more like extra, like a bonus thing, because the efforts to adapt machine learning, like to create the model for one game and to have an AI that knows to play one game, it may be a lot of work if it's just for testing or for QA when you already have different things in place that can work right now. But then if you already are working with the studios on the AI for the multiplayer game, then well, you can use almost the same AI, but just for a different purpose. So it's more about repurposing something that you've already developed.
Yeah, I mean, if you can train an AI to play the game, you could train the AI to try and break the game. And it sounds
exactly,
like it could be
yes.
a good way to talk about it. I'm really interested in what you were saying there about how the scale of games has increased. You go back in time to the games of 20 years ago, they were a lot more contained. They were still difficult to make, but there was a sense of scope that was like, okay, well, these are the walls of the world we've created, and you can see where they are, and you can test everything within those four walls. Now, with an increasing amount of games that either rely on procedural generation, like you say, and we've seen games like that, things like No Man's Sky, or you look at games like Red Dead Redemption 2, which are just huge. Like the world they take place in is so big. It's like, how could you possibly code AI for that in the old way as these games get bigger and bigger and bigger? And that's a trend that's only increasing. Like, players are more demanding about big game worlds than they've ever been before. They want worlds that are massive and also immersive. And you think machine learning could really help bridge that gap?
Definitely, yes. And that's why it's important right now to start adopting this technology, because we reached the limit of what we can do. And that's funny because you mentioned that players have high expectations. Actually, I think they have just been let down by so many game AIs. It takes lots of effort today to create a believable character with traditional game AI. And so it's a lot of work to make it human-like. And so with machine learning, you can do that in a way much easier way. But, if you ask people about good game AI, they're just going to mention games that are from 10 years ago. That's because the technology hasn't evolved during this time. And so I don't really think that necessarily players have more expectations. They're just tired of being let down by the game AI. If they can give you something, if you talk to lots of players, something that's going to come up again and again when talking about game AIs is the number of games that were completely ruined just because there were a dumb bot somewhere, and that just break the engagement. That doesn't necessarily mean that because of a bot they lost the game or something. Just it was obvious it was a bot, and so you're like, maybe I feel a bit insulted by the game, or you feel that you're not into the game anymore.
Yeah.
And there are many games that are using bots, and it's just, if they were more human-like, if they were smarter, I really dream of a moment where you, as a player, you play a game and you don't care if it's another human or if it's a bot. Like, you don't see the difference. You can't tell. And I can't wait to reach this point, because right now it's not the case. But it's not just because in terms of technically it's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's because it requires a huge amount of effort. Any very good game AI has required a huge amount of effort. And if you look at, for example, a game that is a big multiplayer game, then it's not necessarily your priority. And so you don't necessarily allocate the right resources for that. So that could be tricky too. It's not just that we reach the limit of the technology, it's also, do you have the resources internally to put the efforts to make your game AI believable characters?
Yeah, it takes a lot of investment, doesn't it?
It does, and studios, we understand the complexity of studios' budgets, and so you have to make choices, you have to manage priorities. So yeah, and it's just sad that the players are paying the price of that. So that's what we want to change, but I'm sure it's coming. I mean, I see more and more people very interested in talking about this and how to just level up the game AI. So it's coming for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a future we can all look forward to. And I really want to thank you for joining the show, because it's a really interesting topic. I could talk to you about it all day, but I can't because I've got the rest of the show to do. Thank you for joining me, Amandine. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
We're going to throw to a pre-recorded segment. This is us checking out Xbox Cloud Gaming. So this is Xbox Gaming in the browser, which is a new feature Microsoft just rolled out. And we'll be back in about 10 minutes to go through the latest video game industry news, so don't go anywhere. See you soon. Hello, it's Adam here, and I'm joined by Pete. Say hello, Pete.
Hello.
And we are here taking a look at the beta, or beta if you're American speaking, of the Xbox Cloud Gaming platform in the browser. So this is formerly known as Project xCloud, and there's been a limited beta before that was only on Android. The latest version, which they're sending out invites for to select Game Pass Ultimate members, enables you to use this in a browser like Chrome or Edge. You can even do it on iOS, actually, in Safari. So it kind of opens up a world of possibilities for people to play games without installing them, essentially. And it's built on top of Game Pass, which, if you're not familiar with Game Pass, is sort of like a kind of a Netflix for games, is the kind of vibe it is. There's loads of games that you get as part of your subscription, and you can just play any of them, but usually you have to download them and install them. And what we're going to do is see if you can get away with not installing them. So you can see right now on my screen, this is literally a Chrome browser, nothing special about it. I've come to the URL and logged in, and I'm using an Xbox 360 controller, which you can see here with sexy chat pad, which is
a nice white one.
Yeah, it's classic. And the chat pad for typing insults in chat to people when you dominate them online. And this will be familiar to anyone who's got Game Pass. If you go into Game Pass on a console, for example, you'll see a screen that's like this one, which lists all the kind of games you can play. You can search for them, you can filter them by category and stuff like that. And yeah, the promise is that if your internet's good enough, you can come to this site, you just click on a game, and it will just work. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to see if it works.
Very neat site as well. It looks really nice.
It does look good. Yeah, it's very, very nicely put together. So we thought we'd try and put it through its paces, and you can see some of the games here that you could play. We're going to play Gears 5, or we're going to try to, and we're going to see if it works. So let me just press A on Gears 5, and
Ooh,
it's
here we go.
It's being set up. So one thing to note, if you're an Xbox Series S or X owner, at the minute the game streaming is powered by a bunch of old Xbox Ones somewhere on a rack in Washington. So
That's a good point. Will there be? I assume they'll eventually start rolling it out to different regions.
I think they're going to start rolling out to more regions, but also to updated hardware, because you'll notice at the minute the load times are quite long, and that's because it's running on old Xboxes that don't have SSDs in them, and that kind of stuff. I'm sure it's not actually a real Xbox, it's some sort of Frankenstein Xbox in a server rack. But
this is amazing. You're already in the game.
Yeah, I played Halo with this the other day, and I did okay. I didn't do great.
Bearing in mind, it took me 2 days to download Halo, so
no more, Pete. You can just click it and it will just work.
Just click it and play it. It'll be. I'm really intrigued as to how it performs.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so we're into the menu. I'm going to press A. You'll see the. That was pretty quick, pretty instant. Didn't notice any significant lag there.
Good. Yeah, you'll have to let us know how the input lag is, what that's like, or if there is any.
So if you're playing on a phone like iOS, for example, if you have a controller you can pair, then you can use a controller, and a lot of games require them, but there are some games they've added touch controls to, so you could play on an iOS device just directly on the phone with your fingers. So this is the menu. I'm going to try and show this on webcam as well. So down, down, up, up. Feels pretty good.
Can you full screen the browser?
I could full screen the browser. I have the option to do that with this stream options up here. I'm not going to because it's going to mess up the recording. But yeah, you do have the option to go full screen to get rid of like the browser Chrome and stuff like that. I want to leave the browser Chrome there because I think I want to prove to you this is in a browser.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So let's select the original campaign, and I've not played much of this really at all.
I was going to say, I assume if you playing a game that you've already worked through, it will just pick up from where you left off?
Yeah, so most games work that way. If they're Xbox Anywhere titles, then the way that works is it allows you to sync data in between them, and when you start the game, it kind of the message says we're just fetching your data from somewhere else.
Very cool. It feels like, well, it doesn't feel like you're getting any lag at all, to be honest.
It's pretty impressive. So there's been a couple of times when I've noticed slowdown. But I think that's more to do with my internet. So, I mean, I have a relatively good connection here, pretty poor upload, pretty good download. If you're a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber, it's included. And there's a lot of potential, obviously. So at the minute, this is in browser. But, you know, if they added this to the Xbox dashboard itself, you could use this to try games before you download them. You could use it for demos. It just really lowers the barrier to entry to trying new games, which is always a good thing. And that's what Game Pass is all about.
I guess it's all about being able to playing the games on the go. Like if you can play this on your phone and tablet, then being able to play from anywhere is a huge incentive for Microsoft and games publishers as well.
I have a name.
So me and Adam have just sat through 10 minutes of cutscenes.
I mean, control.
And now we're finally into the game.
And finally, this is Gears of War.
This is my call.
It looks great.
If the first minister doesn't
Look
like
at that
it,
water.
she can yell at me,
So good.
which she almost certainly will.
Tell us where to go, Control.
I'll do my best, but remember, no one's been in that
How does the
facility
input
for
feel?
like 25 years.
Feels pretty good.
That's pretty evident.
You're not there to buy a timeshare. You're there to launch an old Hammer-a-thon prototype.
And your intel says one of the silos is still intact, right?
Yeah, as far as
looks
they can
amazing.
tell. Just get Dave to
Yeah,
a
to be able to play a game of this
functional
fidelity in your
control
browser
handle the
is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Or on a phone even.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do a little run.
Ooh. He's quite quick with all that armor on as well.
Yeah, I mean, the input so far feels great.
Yeah. Sounds coming through nicely as well.
Yeah.
Dave, Mike, we get those satellites. Hey, get back! Oh shit!
What the hell?
You'll have to bleep that out.
I think there's a place that's falling apart.
You're allowed to swear on the internet, right?
Yeah.
I hope so, otherwise I'm in
Come
big
on,
trouble.
we can use the ledge.
Get back! We're coming down!
Oh, here we go.
Dave, send a pulse and let's see what we're dealing with.
That's
Oh,
how
there they are.
they used to have they had a pulse mechanic in the division. It's exactly the same.
How do you want to do this? Oh, I'll take care of this.
Oh, they did change. Wow.
Okay, let's put him down!
They did change it.
Cover!
Okay, a bit of slow down there.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it slowing down? But just me.
No, it's not just you. We're experiencing that this side too.
Oh no.
Not a perfect service.
I imagine as well, you got to remember you're doing it on a US server.
Toss a flag if you got him!
I'll do that.
More drones!
Oh, that's cool. Start firing your weapon again, that seems to be the cause of it.
Only one left!
Alright, that's all of them.
Nice.
Baird? It's confirmed. Zero burial site is
So
active.
yeah, I mean, I think there is some slowdown at times.
Okay,
I definitely
Condor's
experienced it
in the
there.
air. Let me
It's
know
hard
if
to
you
know
need
whether that's the
reinforcements.
server or whether that's my internet.
We get a handle now.
Yeah.
Come on, I'm gonna find one of those
It's,
silos.
I imagine time of day will
Swarm
probably
and
affect
Threat
these
Wolf.
things as well.
Yeah.
Hey, I think we can
Like,
get down this way.
I'd be intrigued as to how it forms at like a peak time.
Yeah. And I think, like, if you have an Xbox, that's obviously still the best way to play these games.
Oh yeah,
But
especially if you got a new one.
yeah. But if you're out on the go, or if you want to try a game without installing it, I think this is a really interesting way of doing it. Yeah. Worth
I think
checking out.
I think if I was on the go as well, I probably wouldn't be playing this. You'd probably be going for maybe more of a on the go type game.
Yeah, we wanted to put it through its paces and do something
Yeah, no,
severe.
definitely.
I'm okay, alright? Let's just find a silo.
I mean, it's still so impressive. I'm
the record.
amazed by it.
You don't seem okay.
I'll live.
We're going to throw back to the studio. Thanks very much for joining me, Pete.
No worries. Cheers, guys.
Active hives.
And
Everywhere we
see you
go,
on
the
the Etch
burial
Play video.
site is active. All the more reason to
Bye.
get
Bye
ahead
bye.
of the
Bye bye.
Let's hope Jin sees it that way.
Hello and welcome back. You are watching the Etch Play weekly live show. I'm your host this week. My name is Adam Burt, and I'm joined now for some industry news by Ben Joy. How's it going, Ben?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Very enjoyed your conversation with Amandine. Some very interesting stuff there.
Yeah, and Amandine's still in the chat. If you've got any questions for her, feel free to write them up, and she will hopefully give you an answer if she's still there. We're going to talk about some industry news, though. You ready to do this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, the first news story of the week is all about the Oscars. Did you watch the Academy Awards this year, Ben?
I didn't, actually. I didn't watch them this year.
So not usually a place where games are honoured, and still weren't honoured really this year. But what's interesting is that a documentary commissioned by Respawn has won an Academy Award. So Respawn are the creators of Apex Legends and Titanfall, and also critically Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, which is a virtual reality title for the Oculus suite of VR headsets. And as part of their commitment to the Medal of Honor franchise, they produce these documentaries you can actually watch in the game. The one that won was called Colette, and it's about the story of Colette Marin Catherine, a French resistance fighter, and it follows her journey back to Germany for the first time since World War II. It's the first ever Academy Award win for a video game company to produce a documentary and win an award for it. I've not seen it yet, but I've got it on my watch list. You can actually find it on YouTube at time of writing or time of broadcast. I think The Guardian have got the rights to upload it to their YouTube channel, so you can watch it on YouTube right now. It's about 25 minutes long. And yeah, I'm excited to watch this. I've heard it's really good. Are you to check this out, Ben?
I am, yeah. I really like documentaries, especially around the war. I find that really interesting. And in the wider context, as you say, like this is the first time a video game company studio has been honoured at the Academy Awards. And what I find most interesting about this is we talk quite a lot about the extended experience, and often extra content is something we talk about, be it in films, shorts, that kind of thing. But we always kind of see things that relate directly to the game, whereas this is it's complementary to the game. It's real life. It's you can watch this by itself without playing Medal of Honor, but it's a really nice complement. And I would be interested to see whether we see more of that rather than just creating the content that ties 100% into the game. Is there more of this complementary content of things outside of the world of the game, which is related, which we'll start seeing companies doing? Because and we often talk about how creative you can get with the actual IP of the game. If you then bring in things that relate to the IP of the game outside of the IP, you could create anything. And it's really exciting to see the industry moving that way and starting to think that way. I think we talk about this a lot. It's like it's a real signal that the industry is growing up. Especially the content and the focus of the documentary. It's a very grown up move for the company, and I'm excited to see what else we get now that hopefully this starts the ball rolling.
Yeah, well done to everyone at Respawn involved, and congratulations on your award win. Everyone check out that documentary. It sounds really good, and they've done right by the Medal of Honor franchise there, I think, in terms of the theme and the tone and the historical context, which is very important to consider. Next up, slightly lighter news story, but also a strange one. I mean, I think everyone's given up on trying to predict what Nintendo are going to do with their games. Sometimes they just drop them like yesterday's news, and sometimes they support them for years. And the latest update is that Super Mario Party, a game which is like 2 years old now, in fact it's bordering 3 years in certain territories, completely out of the blue with no announcement, Nintendo have announced a new update, and it's not just a DLC thing. The new update completely changes the way you play the game because it adds online functionality, which people have been asking for in the Super Mario Party title for a very long time and have given up hope on until just now. What a strange one for a game to get an update so late after coming out. It's previously been virtually unsupported. Like there's been no other updates in this time. There's no announcement. They're just like, hey, by the way, online play. You're welcome. And obviously this creates a longer life for Super Mario Party, so good news if you own it. I do have a copy. You might have seen us play it on the channel before. But yeah, what do you make of this, Ben? What do you make of Nintendo's move here? What's this come from? Is this lockdown inspired?
Yeah, it's weird. Just as we come out of lockdown, but hopefully soon. But yeah, it is a weird one, as you say. This is great because it's going to extend the life of the game. It's something we talk about a lot, and the long tail of games. Like I said, what's weird is that it's kind of, we often talk about long life games like you keep going, you keep going, you keep going. This is kind of like not a resurrection, because the game wasn't dead, but
I mean, it was
to not do anything. To not do anything for so long, and then all of a sudden be like massive new feature. It's like, okay. Great. I mean, I can imagine everyone who had the game, or a lot of people are going to, re-pick it back up. I would expect to see, them to have a little bit of a boost in sales, because why would people keep buying it if nothing new's coming out? I don't know about this one specifically, but historically Nintendo games don't lose their value. They very rarely drop in price. Mm-hmm. So you're not really going to be picking it up on many sales. But now there's this whole new element of the game. I would expect people who haven't bought it previously might now be interested that they have that online play. So I mean, that's Nintendo for you. I love Nintendo. Like you said, you don't know what they're going to do, but I typically like what they do. I'll have to check out this new mode. I'm excited to try it because you don't get to play Super Mario Party much nowadays on by yourself in your house. Hopefully soon to change here in the UK. Our next news story is about the International Olympic Committee, which is not an organisation we talk about very often, but this is exciting because the IOC have announced a new esports series. It's called the Olympic Virtual Series, and it will reportedly include game versions of baseball, cycling, rowing, sailing, and motorsports.
It begins on May 13th, so it's still pretty separate from this summer's Tokyo Games. It's not actually part of the Olympics, unfortunately, at least not this time around. But the OVS, as they're calling it, is a partnership between the IOC and 5 international sports federations and game publishers. I've had a look at the list of games they're going to be playing for these sports, and the one that people will be most familiar with is the motorsports events, because that's going to use Gran Turismo, a very popular driving game that viewers at home will be familiar with from PlayStation. And yeah, it's one step closer to esports being recognised as a sport by the Olympic Committee, which is a very important committee in the world of sport. What do you make of this, Ben? Do you think we ever see esports at the actual Olympics?
I potentially going to have a controversial opinion on this for this show. I wouldn't like to see it in the Olympics. I would like to see it partnered with the Olympics. I know we've had conversations before about the Olympics separately, not video games related. So I have very specific opinions about what I think should be in the Olympics, and I don't think esports should be within the Olympics. But I really, really like the idea of it being partnered with the Olympics, and it feel like it's I like this that it's in the run up to the Olympics, or even if it's running parallel, but it's its own thing with the partnership. I think it's great to get recognised. I like that, and I absolutely think esports should be recognised in the same kind of light as traditional sports, because it's grown that way. It's got huge fan bases. You train. It is the real deal. It's not people just playing in the back bedroom. It's the real deal. But I think this is gonna help it grow. I really like that it's a partnership with the Olympics, and a committee as big as this is bringing esports onto that stage. I know they talked about not wanting to bring in, violent games, and that totally makes sense. Especially like with the branding of the Olympics, they wouldn't want to kind of bring that into their brand. Yeah, so they're not going to want to bring that into their.
They've
brand,
seen the movie and they're not on board.
Nothing to do with the violence. Just hated the movie. But yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great for the world of esports. I think it will. Hopefully it will be a good partnership for both. It will bring more eyes onto esports, and it will bring more eyes onto the Olympics, which is, quite an old school thing. So as that becomes more modern, they'll be hoping to bring younger eyes and more eyes to the Olympics. But as I say, for me, separate but partnered, not
part of the event.
And I think it will be stronger as its own thing as well, to be honest. Otherwise, you're just going to get lost in the Olympic shuffle. So that's what I think.
I did do a little bit of research. I couldn't find this out. Maybe we'll come back next week and tell you if we managed to find out. But I couldn't tell whether you were going to get actual medals for participating in this virtual series, whether you would get an actual Olympic gold medal or something similar. So I think the prize is yet to be determined, as far as I could tell.
You get some NFTs. That's what you get now, an NFT.
Yeah, Bitcoin medal. Doesn't exist in reality, but it's worth loads. Next up, so we're just at the end of a financial quarter, so every time this happens, all the manufacturers, or most of the manufacturers, are in a rush to get out there and talk about how great their numbers are, and the good news is, the industry as a whole is, reporting increased growth. So I've got some stats for you to reel off. Microsoft have unveiled that Xbox Series X and S demand has pushed up their hardware sales by 232%. And Xbox content and services, so that's like actual sales of games and things, which now includes Bethesda, is up by 34%. So both strong numbers out of the Microsoft camp. And not to be outdone, Sony were quick on the press release to announce that they have sold 7.8 million PlayStation 5s, which is pretty good going, especially considering the stock issues they've been having in terms of keeping them on store shelves and making enough of them, frankly, in the way the world is right now. So good news for both sides of the aisle, and good news for the industry as a whole. It's continuing to see growth. Anything to add, Ben?
No, I'm not surprised. You touched on it, the stock issues. It wasn't going to be like this huge boom and then like everyone's got one, so no one's going to buy one anymore. It's selfishly, as soon as I got mine, I stopped looking. But the fact I was able to get one kind of signaled that demand is, the demand is still there, but the stock is coming, and I feel like it is getting easier to get one. Mm-hmm. Still, it's not as easy as just going online and grabbing one immediately. But as that opens up, more and more people will get it. I think had there been the stock, the quarter one numbers or the first quarter numbers would have been even better than they were.
Yeah.
I think it was purely down to you just could not get your hands on them. If there was one to be had, it was purchased. Mm-hmm. So I would expect the next quarter to continue to be strong as well. I think the demand is there. They just need to, and I understand why, but they just need to keep churning them out, and people will keep buying them because people want them.
Yeah. And no word from Sony, I don't think, but Microsoft have confirmed this week that they're expecting to still have stock issues into June, but they're hoping to have it alleviated by then. So that's only a month and a bit away if you're watching this live. Last news story of the week then, and every week we like to end on a story which is about games for good. So this is our belief that games can be a powerful force for good in the world. We like to highlight charitable efforts, highlight increased diversity, environmental impacts that companies are making. And this week's story is about League of Legends by Riot Games. They released a skin in actually December last year, but it's been on sale for a little while. It raised $7 million for charity, so players were able to buy the skin. It was called the Elderwood Ornn skin for a limited time, and proceeds going towards a charitable fund that Riot Games have established called the Social Impact Fund, which funds a variety of charities, various missions. Last year they did a similar scheme with a different skin, obviously, and they raised $6 million last year, and this year they've bettered that again. They've gone $1 million better than last year, so increased charity and more happy players, we hope, with the attractive new skin for their League of Legends character. That brings us to the end of our show. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate you tuning in. If you've liked the show, if you've liked our discussion about the news, or my discussion earlier with Amandine about Game AI, or our pre-recorded video about Xbox game streaming, don't forget to follow us here on Twitch if you're watching us live. There's a little purple button underneath the video. You can press it right now and you'll be notified as soon as we go live, and you'll be told when we've done videos and you were offline and things like that. If you're watching us on YouTube, where you can find all of our videos in kind of catch-up format, it's like the iPlayer of the Etch Play team, you can follow us there as well, or you can subscribe rather to our channel and you'll be notified when we post new videos. I've been Adam Burt. He's been Ben Joy, and this has been the Etch Play Weekly Live Show. We'll see you back here at the same time, same place, next Thursday at 4 PM, right here on Twitch. Thanks, guys. Bye.
See ya.
I haven't actually set up the ending screen.
Oh, that's not very good.
Give me 5 seconds.
5, 4.
Oh, there's pressure
3,
now.
2,
There's too much pressure.
1. You said 5 seconds.
I did it.
Oh. Amateur.